You can see we are the people honk and support what we're doing. We just need to get this message out outside of LA, preferably back to Washington, D.C., to the President of the United States.
So what is your name, sir, and why are you standing out here?
My name is Bob Rosebrock. I'm a Vietnam-era veteran, served 1965-67 U.S. Army, did not serve in Vietnam. But I'm out here trying to save land that was deeded specifically for our veterans and to help bring them home. This land was deeded in 1888 as a national home for disabled and homeless veterans. It's being used for anything but that. We won a federal judgment. There are 9 illegal real estate deals. The VA appealed it and then settled behind closed doors in 2015, January 28th, 2015, with a #1 promise to end veteran homelessness in Los Angeles by the end of 2015. Well, we're already into 2019, almost halfway through, and we're still the capital for homeless veterans. We've got homeless veterans living right outside this property, and they don't like us because we're telling the truth.
And the property we're at is where?
This is at the corner of Wilshire and San Vicente Boulevard in West Los Angeles. It's adjacent to the community of Brentwood. Surrounded by some of the wealthiest zip codes in the nation. Obviously, Wilshire is one of the busiest boulevards, and 405 is right close, one of the busiest freeways in the nation. So this land is extremely valuable. There's over here, there's 16 acres that a homeowner group got a 30-year lease, rent-free for a public park. Fortunately, we were able to stop them. They went ahead and tried to build a public amphitheater on here. We stopped them at that. The federal court forced them to demolish it. And then the VA turned around and reimbursed them $393,000 for an illegal amphitheater. And we've asked for money for a tent sitting on it. They won't even talk to us. But if you're really wealthy and powerful, you get whatever you want here. That is the problem. This is not run by the VA. It's not like any VA in the nation. This, all the surrounding wealth and power. Brentwood School, one of the wealthiest private schools, $40,000 a year for tuition. They've got about 22 acres for a state-of-the-art sports complex. UCLA has a 10-acre collegiate baseball diamond, one of the finest in the nation. And all of these little pockets stand out when you go through on a tour of this VA, and everything else looks like Detroit. And you can hear we're out here in the corner, cars are honking and supporting what we do, but there's little they can do. Like I said, it's all controlled by the wealth, the power of Senator Feinstein, Congressman Liu. They don't answer to veterans, they answer to their wealthy constituents, and that's a very major problem.
Can you talk a little bit more about how this land was handed over to the city and how that happened and what was supposed to happen with the land initially?
Okay, yeah. Very good question, because after the Civil War, and as the soldiers of the Union all got older, most of them, from the North and the Midwest, East, they were getting old in their years, and their health was in declining, so they wanted to find a warm climate to house and care for them. And they obviously couldn't do it in the South. There'd been probably another war going on. So they came out here on the West Coast and sought some land. 2 families One, Senator John P. Jones, who was a senator of Nevada, made his fortune in silver mining and invested in land here, along with Colonel DeBaker. And they bought masses of land here in this area, West LA, which was just ranch land. And in 1887, an act of Congress sought to bring this land, into a project, and they did. The two gentlemen donated over 600 acres here, and it states 5 times in the deed to the United States government to be permanently maintained as a national home for disabled soldiers. It states in the Act of Congress, if a veteran is unable to provide for himself, he shall be admitted here. So it meant homeless. And they called it a home, a national home, meaning there should never be a homeless veteran. They had the good sense in 1888 to say that. And over the years, as we stand here with Wilshire Boulevard, it came through, right through the middle of the VA. Then the 405 dissected it. And they've given the land right across the street over there, it's 10 acres. And they gave that to the Army Reserve back in 1955, I think. And at that time, they were living in this area. I say they, those who served in the reserve and whatever, but the land became so valuable, they were forced out. So most of those who serve in the reserve are out in Lancaster, faraway areas. So this land is not really being used as it wants to. The Army tried to sell it for $500 million. To give you an idea, 10 acres, $50 million an acre. And they were blocked by the county and said it would then become county oversight, and we will zone it as industrial or warehouse, so it would be worthless. Just over the period of time, it's just, like I said, been dissected, been torn apart, and it's still the largest VA property in the nation, but we're the capital for homeless veterans. So none of this adds up. And when we get better, we call ourselves the old Veterans Guard, and I'm the youngster, I'm at 77, and most of them passed away. Just incredible human beings, American patriots. World War II veterans who started out with us. Recently, just after the first year, we lost 2. One was 95, one was 96, lost one last year in 97. We have one, probably our most senior would be Dave Calmer, who's 80, going on 88. He's Korean, Vietnam War veteran. And their principles are just totally different than what's going on today. Because we all understand what this land was given for, and every generation has been entrusted to leave things better than you found it. Well, we found it was not too good at all, and we've been trying to bring it up to what should be in accordance with the deed, and we become the target for them for unlawful arrest and everything you can imagine.
So after that deed was written, and it said in the deed that it was going to be a home for homeless veterans, what actually happened after that? So, once the land was given over, what happened from there? Well,
that's a great question, because it was a remarkable place here. They built, in fact, what's interesting, they had veterans that came in here ahead of time before they started construction. They lived in tents. And they helped in the construction, and they built this magnificent home here with Victorian architecture, resident halls, dining halls. They had a library. That was a city in its own self. Just beautiful gardens. It was a place, safe haven, and they had over on across the street is what they call the governor's mansion, which was not the governor of county. This was like a sovereign territory, and the governor, what would be considered at that time, was usually always actually a retired military veteran, an officer who was usually a medical. So there was a complete camaraderie, complete understanding. And then as the Civil War veterans passed on, and then things started changing, and most of them passed on in the early 1920s. And that's when Brentwood came in as a city or a community. And then the VA itself came into existence in 1930. Prior to that, this was a board of managers that controlled this. That included the president, commander-in-chief, and at that time would have been called the Secretary of War. And they switched over to Secretary of Defense in later years. And as well as the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Now, you got three of the top people on that board. And they took care of it. They understood what this land was all about. And they made sure that it was upheld to the highest standards. And again, as transitions came about, things started changing piecemeal by piecemeal.
Can you talk a little bit about those changes? I mean, how do we go from having a board that is composed of people like that to, I guess the VA coming in and starting to build whatever's here now?
Right. Well, what you see in here now, they tore down all the great Victorian buildings in the mid-30s. And what you see now, of the Victorian, now you see a Mediterranean-style architecture. And that, if you look, when you go through here, they have little windows, small windows with bars on them. It was more of an asylum. Because remember this, and in the 1920s, UCLA in the late 20s came into existence. And they created a medical school that would probably be nowhere where it is today, one of the biggest and highly respected in the nation, if they didn't have veterans to experiment on. Then after the World War I veterans, they performed lobotomies and shock treatment, anything and everything. And like I said, it became more of an asylum here. And over a period of time, things just kind of dissolved from being a board of managers of some of the highest people in the nation and most entrusted to what we have today. And in fact, after the settlement, they created what they call a Community Veterans Engagement Board. Now, the community is first before the veterans. And I'm not necessarily tooting my horn, but I was the one that brought the ACLU in. At that time, took a challenge to them, and they stepped up and we won the judgment. And I have never been acknowledged asked to be at any meeting. You have people that never served, wouldn't know which end of a rifle to hold, have probably no relatives even in the military, but they're from the community and they have their priority interest. That was a hand-selected board, and they get their marching orders from the higher power, the hidden hand, as it's called, that pulls the strings. And so we have probably one of the greatest disasters and biggest land fraud scandals in American history. I remember growing up in history, and the Teapot Dome scandal was supposed to be big, and in fact it included some oil wells or whatever. There's an oil well on this property. It doesn't belong to the veterans of the VA. Brightburn Energy and outside sources come in, and they've drilled under the freeway, over to the cemetery, anywhere and everywhere, and they're a few hundred feet from the hospital. And you have Feinstein and Waxman fighting President Trump about drilling offshore, but say absolutely nothing about drilling on VA property where veterans are trying to heal from defending this country. I think when this really gets out there in full force, it's going to shock the country, because this is not who we are. And the people who have misrepresented who we are need to be accounted for, and quite frankly, hauled out in handcuffs and shackles and taken someplace for the rest of their life. because they're undeserving to be on this American soil. They should be down at Camp Gitmo, and I'm not being light about it. Maybe I am even being light. I think they deserve worse, but they certainly do not deserve to be on American soil.
And these buildings that are here on this park right now, what exactly are these buildings used for?
Well, many of them are empty. They're rat infested, and they typical of the fashion of way things operated. They got in on the L.A. City Planning Commission, and because many things, even though it's federal property, there's the city, the county you have to deal with. And they designated almost every building in here as historic, meaning you can't touch them. And the best you can get is to where they might have some asbestos to remove it, put a fresh coat of paint on some very obsolete, dysfunctional, and buildings that have a horrible history in them. They should all be leveled. We've submitted our plan, and they don't want to hear us. We call for tearing down all the buildings, leaving one or two as historic, absolutely, but to rebuild this into a magnificent 21st century home. Now, the only thing they did was steal that tagline from me. They now call putting a fresh coat of paint as, of 21st century, and that's how they manipulate from that whole concept of a settlement. It's just, it saddens me that this is the way I grew up, and I think your father and that this is a great country. We sent our young men and women, mainly the men, over to Vietnam to fight the communists, and right now we're turning into a communist country. And it's got to be stopped. We got to fight. When you serve in the military, you take an oath, and it's, as most will tell you, that it is a lifetime oath to defend our country and our Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And the big fight right now is the domestic enemy. And I remember when I got discharged, I had had worked. I was driver for the Chief of Staff of the U.S. Army in Hawaii, and he was a World War II Korean combat hero, a great man. And he wanted me to go on to officer school. When I was at the top, as far as I was in command headquarters, and as a draftee for 2 years, I learned so much from him. I didn't want to go down and start all over, and the Lord only knows where things could take you. And I told him that, I was happy I could serve my country better now, knowing and learning from him. And he got in my face and he said, "Let me remind you," he said, "a soldier's duty is never done. And in your oath and your creed and everything, you pledge your life for your country. You pledge that you will leave no comrade behind. That means not just on foreign soil here, like to see veterans on the sidewalk out here it's tough, because I don't know how to help them. I certainly do, and that is to bring them inside. We were just here, and you saw it. I come in and bring his dog in, turn it loose, run wild. The veteran goes in there, they'll be arrested for trespassing or loitering.
Speaking of which, you've had several legal problems because of this. Can you talk about those, how they started, what happened?
Yes, thank you on that, because indeed, every Sunday we came out here, starting on March 9th, 2008, we start what we call the Veterans Revolution, a peaceful and nonviolent, following the guidelines of Gandhi and Dr. King. And every Sunday we put the American flag up on the fence. We also put a POW flag. And for 66 Sundays, nobody paid any attention. And then they held a big fundraiser. Disney sponsored it. It was $1,000 a person, and it was a fundraiser for AIDS in Africa. Money did not go to our veterans. And it was huge. At that time, I think it's about 2009, Miley Cyrus is just starting. And if you wanted to go backstage and meet with her, you could pay $100,000. That kind of a setting going on inside. And one of our veterans, who was a career Air Force Master Sergeant, said, we got to enforce the U.S. flag code when life or property are in danger, you hang the flag in distress. It's in the U.S. flagpole. But not only that says life or property. We had both life and property in danger, so we hung the flag in distress, and I got arrested 6 times right in a row.
Here, you got arrested here.
Here, yeah.
Who was it that came and arrested you?
Well, it was interesting. Started out because we were writing about it, and they ended up sending me a citation through the mail. They were so chicken to come out here, but they would, and I had to go into federal court for the arraignments. And on the first one I went down, I got it dismissed. And you got to remember, inside that federal courtroom, in every courtroom, is an American flag, and I'm in there for displaying a placard. And the judges just didn't want to deal with it, so all 6 of them got dismissed. And I had contacted at that time because I figured after I got the first one, it was going to be serious because they, I couldn't even leave the state of California. Imagine that. Because of the arraignment and everything on there. And after I walked out of the first one, probably 11 o'clock, it was already dated at 1 o'clock the next day. They sent out a warrant for my arrest. And I had been there. I had followed, but you know, how clever to make a simple error, a clerical error, and have you arrested and put you through it. I knew from the get-go. They were out after me. They didn't like our message. They didn't mind us hanging the flag. That's patriotic, right side. And when you hang it in distress, it sent out the message of life and property, and they didn't like it. And it's in their emails and communication and everything inward. Anyway, I finally got the ACLU to represent me, and right at that time we were working to finalize it. They dismissed the other 5. And so I told the ACLU, I appreciate you, coming to stand up for us and how we display the American flag, but it's why we display it in distress is the problem. They eventually filed a lawsuit against the VA. They had 6 claims in there, 5 of them got dismissed. One that stayed was that they had 9 illegal real estate deals in here. That was filed in 2011. They also filed one on my behalf, and it was a judgment violating my constitutional right to free speech, viewpoint discrimination. And it was, no big deal. We won, but the big thing was we went forward with this second one, and I think it was August 26th, if I'm not mistaken, of 2013, the judge entered a judgment against the VA for 9 real estate deals that were unauthorized by law and therefore void. And that included Brentwood School and all that. Well, then they appealed it. And I didn't put the flag up, just kept on. There goes, I forgot to mention, that's Joe, Dr. Joe. He's about 97 now, World War II veteran. And we stay in touch. He lives close by. He's a great man. And but what happened then is we, waited for the settlement, or to evict them. They appealed it. So we, after they agreed to they met behind closed door and agreed to vacate the judgment with a promise of ending veteran homelessness. Well, without even reading it, before they had the press conference, and I called it a Trojan horse. I said it's a big fraud. If they'll unwind, and you won't believe what's going to happen. And fast forward, and we'll go back to it. Every bit of that came true. But they came out, and the front gates here were locked at that time. And Steve Palmer, I remember, he passed away when he was 88, and on his deathbed, I promised him, we're going to get those gates open, we're going to open and have a tent city and everything. And I made that promise to several veterans who have passed on. And that was our commitment, to open these gates. Well, Secretary McDonald came out. He's the one that weaseled around with the settlement with Bobby Shriver and Ron Olson. And neither one of them were veterans. But they were the spokespersons, and all that wealth and power again. They were Bobby Shriver has kids and grandkids, nieces and nephews that go to Brentwood School. Anyway, we got. They decided they were going to open this gate on their own with no provision. Now they were just going to open with the illusion that there's transparency. Now we're opening up and all this other phony stuff. And I let it be known that I'm going to be there and challenge them. Well, typical in their fashion and form, they sent out an email and said it's being canceled because of the gopher holes over here. Well, they were going to also dedicate a building 209 inside that day. It was, I think, 54 rooms, an existing building. They didn't have to pay for the land. They didn't have to pay for the land or the building. All they had to do was refurbish it. $20 million for 54 rooms. And so I, along with a few others, we were up there waiting for that then. We thought this was council, and then somebody called and said, hey, they're down here. We sent a guy down there and took a video, and it's pretty amazing. Ted Hayes, he's normally here with this Mr. Patriot. He's outstanding, and he gave an excellent interview, very similar to what we're doing. And about where's the old veterans guard? They're the ones that started all this. The publisher of the Brentwood News wrote a very nice article, though we didn't get along, and he mentioned it. But he said if it wasn't for Rosebrock, we wouldn't be having this, at that time, what appeared to be progress. And he said, but Rosebrock is not happy. And that was in June of 2015, after the settlement. Well, right before they came out here on June 4th to open the gates, the Memorial Day before, I think then was probably May 31st, and I hung the American flag out there, started over again. I kept it up there for 6 months, and I kept writing articles and how bad this was and everything, and they came out and decided to start arresting me over the displaying the American flag. And every time I would take photos and videos of them, and nobody said a word to me. And I kept going down to federal court arraignments, and the judge said, okay, you're being charged with displaying a placard. How do you plead? And I said, not guilty. So he asked an assistant U.S. attorney. He said, well, Mr. Rosebrock's pleading not guilty. What happens if he goes to trial and he is guilty? And she rambled off 6 months in prison and 5-year probation and all this other stuff. And he said, do you understand? I said, I heard what she said. I don't understand it. I said, I'm simply displaying what's standing next to you. Now, if that's a placard, then yeah, I'm guilty. Well, I'm not. It's an American flag. Those magistrate judges did not want any part of it. They'd say, well, we're setting a trial date. Then they'd all get dismissed. This angered them. So they decided to start citing me for taking photographs after all this period of time. And not only did they decide they were going to take photographs, they were going to handcuff me and throw me in the back of an SUV. Kind of the old Al Capone days. I'm just breaking your leg today. Next time, finish you off. I mean, it was a message. There's no doubt about it. They tightened the cuffs on me so tight. We took photos. Ted did. We called 911 because it broke the skin. And I'm still just in awe of how these VA police can lie the way they do in their reports and fabricate. Well, fortunately, I got so much on camera that refutes anything they say. I got judicial walk. I broke ranks with the ACLU. I broke ranks because they threw us under the bus in the settlement. Now, I brought them to the thing, the whole thing. They didn't even invite me to the press conference of the settlement agreement. What did that tell you? They didn't want me to know. And like I said, without even reading it, I knew what was there. And so I broke ranks. I was very, very, very disappointed. But they proved who they are. It was interesting, if I can go back a little bit, when I contacted them. I tried to do a research. I never knew of them ever defending a veteran. So when I called, and what got their attention, obviously, I was hanging a flag upside down in distress. To them, whole different story. So when I had a meet to sell our position on it, I'd asked, it was Peter Eliasberg, who was the attorney that I had to go to sell, our side of it. And I asked him, I said, let me understand, ACLU defends the Constitution. He said, absolutely. I said, no, you don't. The men and women in uniform, they defend it. You, I don't care if you're in the Supreme Court, you only try to uphold it and enforce what you see it. I said, physically, they defend that Constitution. Oh, okay. And I said, and I understand that the ACLU defends minorities. Absolutely. I said, veterans are a minority. You defend the homeless and the disabled. Absolutely, absolutely. And I said, we've got homeless and disabled veterans that are having their home stolen. They're on the street. And I said, but you've never defended veterans before. And to our knowledge, the first time they ever did in our case then. And they had a chance to uphold the first word of their American Civil Liberties Union. But I've told them all along, I said, you got to get rid of the word American in there. You do not. And like you said, their only issue with me on it was they thought they were going to make a big deal because it was the flag was upside down. I never call it upside down. It's in distress. It's inverted and everything else. But anyway, what was interesting, I got a total of 18, 14 of my own flag the second time, and 4 others. And then I got arrested again on Memorial Day, of all days, and I was displaying, because they'd taken all my flags. I mean, I'm depleted. I had big 4x6 flag. I'm a 4x6-inch flag, and they came out and took it, and the guy, Officer Garcia, then cited me for displaying a placard and for taking photos without permission. And when I had to go down for the arraignment, then the U.S. Attorney, Assistant U.S. Attorney, stops me outside. She says, Mr. Rosebrock, you can't come in here anymore without an attorney. You have to have an attorney. I said, well, I'm winning every time. Why do I need an attorney? And she said, no, you can't do it. So they knew I'd broken ranks with the ACLU. They thought they were going to put me on to a public defender, or as they call them, public pretenders. I mean, they work for the government. It's just so bad. And so I had a court hearing, a trial, December 1st, 2016. And I showed up without an attorney and everything else. And the judge says, you gotta have an attorney. I said, no, I don't want to debate it back and forth. And he said, now I'm going to order. They had a public defender in there. So they told me to go talk with the lady. I did 30 seconds. I said, not going to do it. I told her, I said, I've got volumes of evidence. She said, I decide what evidence. I said, no, I do. And I respect attorneys and what they want. But when you come off right as coarse as she was about it, I knew she was not on our side. And so I went back in the courtroom. He said, okay, I will appoint one. They have what they call a panel of attorneys outside that sort of thing. And I'm trying frantically, because my contacts out here San Marino, where Judicial Watch has a West Coast office out there, I couldn't get through. Connie Ruffley, whose husband was a Vietnam War veteran, she was off work because he was going through some trouble. And so I couldn't get through to Ernie Norris, who was the actual attorney representing. She was their executive director. But out of clear, she's, Bob, I'm sorry I haven't been in touch with you. I'm calling back. What can I do? And I told her, let me get you through to Ernie. And we got to Ernie. And Ernie he's a Marine. Spent 30 years with the, he went, after he got discharged during the Vietnam era, he went to college on the GI Bill and became an attorney and worked for the county of Los Angeles as a deputy district attorney. A tough guy, prosecutor. And so they were all for it. And then because displaying a flag is a criminal charge or one thing. Judicial Watch then had to get a criminal defense attorney, and I wouldn't the way I wanted to go on it, because I was ready to go to prison. And that would be honorable for me. And he said his job was to keep me out of prison. Anyway, we went to trial on him. It was dismissed. They couldn't prove that I even put up the flag or I didn't have permission, those kind of things. And then the judge dismissed the photography charges. And the VA turned around and appealed it. And because it was a magistrate judge who dismissed it, it goes not to a panel, but then to another district attorney. And he dismissed it and said, you can't say this person can take photos and that person can't, everything else. Either you take photos or you don't. Your regulation is unconstitutional. And so after we won that, again, then the Judicial Watch filed a lawsuit against the VA for assault and battery, false imprisonment, illegal search and seizure, violation of First, Fourth, and Fifth Amendment. And so that was 2 years ago they filed it, and it's just, they don't have a case. Here's something that's interesting. You may recall a few years ago, Sheriff Baca had some troubles. Now, he was duly elected by the people as a sheriff. He did some things, irregularities and things inside the VA with prisoners and all. And they filed a lawsuit against him. But guess who filed the lawsuit? The U.S. attorneys. And so what?
Big shit, huh?
What?
Big ass shit.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
What? I ain't said nothing.
Okay, we are officially protesting. It's against
Protesting what?
the misuse of VA land.
Oh, where I'm sleeping at?
Yeah,
Where I'm sleeping at?
I guess.
Burn this sign down, man. You don't speak
Sir,
for me.
sir.
Number one, you don't get your gun out. You don't speak
Sir,
for
thank
me,
you. No,
motherfucker.
sir.
You don't
thank
speak for me.
Thank you. Thank you.
You don't speak for me, man.
Sir, thank
Army
you.
and Marine.
Thank you, sir.
Army and Marine.
Sir, thank you.
You don't speak for me. Who you speaking for?
For all veterans.
You ain't speaking for me.
Sir, thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. Everything's fine. Everything's
You 100
fine.
pictures?
Sir,
I need a camera.
sir, we're good. Sir,
Go
thank
take
you.
Go take a look at my place.
Thank you,
On
sir.
the side
Thank
over
you,
here,
sir.
In the van.
I'm fighting for you, okay?
I don't need you to fight for me.
Okay, I don't need you here.
You don't need me.
Thank
But
you,
when
sir.
I go to fight for me, I'm gonna
Okay.
knock the motherfucker's ass out.
All right, sir.
You
Thank
don't want
you.
to be responsible for that.
Sir, thank you. Thank
Do
you.
you?
Okay. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. We're good. We're good.
Well, I keep going. I'm gonna be kicking their ass over there.
Okay,
in front
sure,
of my place.
sure.
Then you
Yes,
take your camera.
yes. Got it.
See
Got
what
it.
you can do.
Okay, got it.
I'll
Thank
be
you.
protesting.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Sir,
Make sure it's up.
thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, all right. Have a great day, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Sorry.
Okay. It's good.
You know, two
Okay.
things happen. I got to protect myself in there.
Oh, absolutely.
I've been there. And if you don't have it on video, you see nothing but hearsay.
There is nothing happening to me today that guy's going to do. Trust me. Just trust me. His problem is mental, for sure.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah, I mean, but again, he doesn't understand we're trying to help him. This is the sad thing is their mental state, and it would be mine too. You don't trust anybody, even
Yeah.
when somebody says, save our land, we're trying to help you.
yeah,
They've been kicked around. He's one of them sleeping up here.
yeah.
I'm trying to get him inside, and it's sad. It's very sad. One day, about a month ago, I had a veteran stopped, talked to us. It was completely different. And he was thanking us and everything else. And somebody walked out with a dog. And I said, see that? He said, yeah. And he said, I've been trying to get inside. He said, they let dogs in. And I'm telling you, real tears rolling down. And I wished I didn't want to take the photo of them now. Unbelievable. This is why we're out here. We're trying to stop this. A small child, you could explain this to a small child. They say, are you kidding me? You get all those people out of there and you bring them inside. What's wrong with you people? A child would tell you that. And that's what we need to do and to get. But, you know, the battle just seems to go on. And but we were talking about...
So we were talking about the Judicial Watch, and you were
Yeah.
kind of wrapping up. I think you were at the point to where it didn't go the way you wanted it to, because he just wanted to get you out of jail. So so you ended up not serving because you said it was dismissed.
Yeah, it was, and there's no way they could enforce it. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I appreciate, you know, Judicial Watch coming in. The big one is to file. It's kind of like with the ACLU. I don't care about that. It's the big one where they now handcuff me and virtually beat the crap out of me. And they, in their, and let me just say, going back when I was being cited, most of the guys were veterans of VA cops, and they said, we're just following orders. And I would remind them, go read the Nuremberg trials, how it starts. Oh, no. It starts out, will you do this against Rosebrock? What would be the next one? Because I know you got a family to feed, and they know it. So you have to go along. And this is what they do to the rank and file. And anyway, we went through depositions. And I think there's a couple of points I wanted to make. I mean, one of them was the executive director, because things changed when she came out. Like I said, in dealing with the VA police, they were, you know, they'd ask me at times, let's turn off the camera, let's talk. You know, and they understand. We had an understanding. But then when we filed the lawsuit, then the U.S. attorneys, as I mentioned, Sheriff Baca had the U.S. attorneys suing him, prosecuting him. Federal law enforcement officers are defended by the U.S. attorneys. They do anything they want. And this is something I had no idea. And the average veteran cannot go out and get Judicial Watch or something. Most of them have to plead guilty. They've destroyed our veterans, and I worry in the future why anyone would want to serve, knowing if the honor is in giving your life to your country, you come back, you're worse off the rest of your life. But the thing with it now, they brought in Ann Brown in 2016. Right, and she kind of had the swagger about her. She's not a veteran. Now, you've been dealing with this Rosebrock, I'll show you how I'm the new sheriff in town. And that's when things got ugly. And the interesting thing is, they had a meeting, or the VA officials, with the U.S. Attorney's Office. She couldn't remember a thing about it. Didn't know who was there, couldn't remember this, couldn't remember that. It was just, you know, one of the most pathetic displays. I look forward to getting her under oath before a jury, I'll tell you. And our Judicial Watch attorneys asked her about the flag. Do you consider the American flag a placard? And I'm telling you, without hesitation of snapping bark, yes, just like that. And that stunned me, because here's the head of the VA in charge of men and women trying to heal from defending the flag, and she thinks it's nothing more than a placard. When it came time then over in my deposition, and there were a lot of issues we went through, but two of them just stood out predominantly to me, and the flag and the land. And David Pincus, the assistant U.S. attorney, asked me, he said, is it true you own property in Indiana? I said, yeah. I said, well, you go and research it? He said, yeah, we do. And I said, it's been in our family. I said, my mom and dad owned it for 20 years. I bought it from them 40 years ago. And I said, I'd like to be living there, should be living there now. It's a third of an acre on a lakeside lot, wooded lot. And they said, let me ask you, do you house any homeless veterans? He said, you always complain we have vacant land here. And of course, I kind of lost it. But, I mean, I just told him it was the most asinine, the kindest thing I say is the most asinine and stupid thing anybody could ask. I mean, we're talking about a third of an acre, 3,000 miles away. And it's an area where there are multiple lakes, and it's all under code and everything. You can't do what you want to do. I mean, like in the average place, you can't set up a homeless shelter unless you have, a zone or whatever. Yet this was deeded, as we pointed out from the beginning, as a national home. If they're asking me why I'm not housing on a third of an acre, 3,000 miles away, totally shrugging their responsibility. And I told them, I said, if you enforce the deed of 1888 the way you come after me on my minutia and malicious prosecution, I said, we wouldn't have a homeless problem. And we're winning right and left. Obviously, they submit summary. They think they're immune to prosecution. That goes in. Then we win all the pretrial stuff, and the judge dismissed their summary judgment. So we're getting up to the week away from Tuesday from the thing. They file an appeal for the summary judgment, which could take another 2 years. They had offered, they know they don't have a case, so they tried to offer a settlement. You can't say the price or anything, but it's about as low as you could get. Meant to be an insult to me, and I wear that as a badge of honor if they would stoop so low to that. They don't know how to deal with this. They really don't. They continue to try to antagonize me. I've always said, going back to the flag, they weren't prosecuting me, they were prosecuting the flag. Think about it, the United States attorneys prosecuting the flag of the United States for being a placard. It had nothing to do with me, I just put it up. You guys interpret it as a worthless piece of nothing, and your executive director thinks it's confirms that it is. Then when you go into the other parts of it, is that they in a summary judgment and trying to settle and all these different things, they're not insulting me. What they hurt, they hurt that gentleman who was just here, because I should be able to go over and help him, not standing out here with a sign saying, save our veterans land. And he doesn't know, understood, but as you saw when he left, we shook hands and everything. It was a misunderstanding, because he just has no trust in anybody. And I don't blame him. And we got to get that trust back. We got to help them. It's a painful way to live over there, and to die on the street after serving your country, and you're right next to the biggest VA in the nation. And dogs go in there and urinate and defecate, and they come out and I've got photos of them in video where just the sign they got over there to come out and demand they clean it up. Big, like a bulldozer with a lift thing on it, picking up mattresses there and just dumping them into a dump truck. It's the most reprehensible thing you could see. And I'm just hoping that we can get this eventually, because don't hesitate or deny, I'm very proud of our commander-in-chief we have now. Loves the American flags, loves our veterans. And what I want to do, we tried through all the peaceful means to get this resolved, but his U.S. attorney that he nominated, what's his name, Nicola Hanna. His name's at the top of it. He's the U.S. attorney for the district, and nominated by the president and approved. And if that's what President Trump promised, that he was going to look at our veterans, and he brings in a guy like Hanna, who quite the opposite, I think it needs to be an issue in the upcoming election, because he needs to clean house. He doesn't know what's going out. He is being shielded. one of the interesting things there, you'll never read about any of this. The LA Times has never written a story about, well, we've been at her 11 years. Not one story. Well, I will take that back. When Bob Poole, years ago, back when we were hanging a flag in distress, Bob was a veteran. He's long retired. Nobody will come out and say anything on behalf of what's going on out here. And an interesting thing, just a few weeks ago, Steve Lopez, who's a writer for the LA Times, he wrote an article, a headline, I don't recall it, but it was slamming President Trump about what he had said about McCain recently, when McCain had the information on the Spygate stuff. Didn't come to him and say, Mr. We've got the information. He went, took it another direction, the Department of Justice, who knew they would sit on it. And that was wrong. And so Lopez decided to go over to the Sepulveda VA. I think he even won a Pulitzer Prize or a sophisticated journalist, did not get permission to go over there. Went inside, took photos, and found out guys that he could get to quote against the President of the United States, and it was a front page story. That's the kind of stuff we're dealing with, and that's what President Trump has now. If President Trump knew that story alone, that a reporter went inside the VA and found that they're there for health care, and went inside and found the guys that he was looking for, and then quoted them. The LA Times should be banned. I mean, it's just, I don't even want to go on. I mean, it's beyond fake news because it's a advertising journal for the Democratic Party.
So an obvious question is, I assume you've contacted the VA yourself. So when you bring up the whole deed of, I think you said it was 1888, and say, hey, in this deed, it says this, what is their response to that? Or have they responded to that?
No, this is the interesting thing. Going back to, I think it's 2008, we had asked at that time, was a larger group with us, to have a meeting, a little summit with the thing. Absolutely not, would not have it. And all the way down the line, in part, even in my deposition, or the deposition with Ann Brown, she was asked 2 areas. What about a tent city? Didn't want to talk about it, wouldn't discuss it. They asked her about a meeting with Rosebrock. We got a lawsuit going, don't want to discuss it. And that's, if she, and I said it in my deposition because Pincus had asked me, he said that when Pincus had to, address these issues and everything with her and everything, and he asked me, he said, what I felt about it. And I said, it's very troubling that the executive director has these attitudes and everything. And I said, if she was a real legitimate executive director when she came here in 2016, and they said, we've got this issue going on, a good one, an honest one, said, let me have a meeting with them. Let me go, just like you came out here today and said, I want to, Mr. Rosebrock, how can we work together? There's some differences, but let's see if we can find some common. Nope. Arrest him, handcuff him, rough him up, let him know a new sheriff's in town and I'm not putting up with it. And it's even when you sit there in the deposition, they lay, with the formality, they lay out, are you familiar with this complaint? I don't know. They said, well, it's a lawsuit. I don't know, that's what we got U.S. attorneys for. That's their problem. That kind of an attitude. Heading up the largest VA in the nation under President Trump. She came in or Obama. She needs to be thrown out of here because she is doing a huge disservice. She answers to the wealth and power. Got a lot of action out here today.
Have you reached out to any local politicians, whoever is the representative of this district, the mayor, anything?
Yep, all of them. I reached out to, going back to Henry Waxman when this was his district. And we had a couple of conversations, I'll put it that way. He puts up a big bluff. I'm just working. I don't get enough sleep. I'm working so hard for our veterans and all that. Well, he was an alumni of the UCLA. He helped bring the deal in, as did Senator Feinstein. Her husband sat on the Board of Regents, California Board of Regents, and he was the one behind that whole deal. Now he was at that time the CEO of CBRA, Coldwell Banker Real Estate, largest in the world. And you know what kind of a deal he cut on 10 acres, prime real estate now. $500 an acre a month for this land over here. You can even get a studio down in South Central. Back in 2006, this is an interesting story. That's why I ultimately want to get Donald Trump in there so we understand. In 2006, 13 years ago, on Santa Monica Boulevard, right at Century City, it used to be where Jimmy's Tavern and the sports network was. I had owned it, leveled it, put it up for auction. Trump bid 2 acres. Trump bid $55 million per acre, $110 million for 2 acres. He got outbid by $200,000. This land goes rent-free here. If you could develop, we're looking here, an office tower like this, with mega billion-dollar properties in here. And when Trump, as we know, he's a very, very good developer, and if he, I'm going to say, yeah, he will learn about this eventually. And the test is going to be if he does something or he doesn't. Obviously, he doesn't need this wealth and power out here. He was recently out here, a fundraiser and all. But he's got enough supporters of the little guys across the country that would counter anything that he's got to sell the soul of the VA for a few $100,000. He's not going to do it. And he's the other side. He wants to be the big winner. And like I said, Ted Lieu, you'd ask, I met with him when he was campaigning to take on Henry Waxman. There were a whole bunch of Democrats were running for his seat. And, but I had asked Lieu at the meeting, and that was supposed to have been like 2014, if I'm not mistaken, where they had a debate. I met him ahead of time. I said, are you familiar with what's going on? And this was after the judgment in 2013. This was 20. He said, yeah, I heard something about it. It's like, yeah, a wishy-washy guy. And I got his card, and I sent him stuff to bring him. Never once did he respond. And when he was elected, I had asked for a meeting. Even after the settlement, wouldn't return or anything. So, I honestly say I've never left one stone unturned in this. And it's a paper trail and everything. Been told no and don't even respond, but it's evidence, as I say. Someday we'll get our day in a grand jury investigation, not a day in court, but a grand jury, and that's what we're shooting for, because we want to prosecute the big ones. And when you saw recently what happened here at this college entrance exam, what happened here will make that look like a parking ticket. And I'm not being sarcastic. I'm telling you how big this is, how big this is and how big that is, but in comparison, it's like a parking ticket. I mean, you got bigger names, you've got politicians, you've got billionaires, you've got some very, very, very big people. And like I said, I've reached out and they've slapped me back, and I'm still here. And I made a commitment to our guys that would stay and fight as long as I'm able, God willing. And doesn't bother. Today is probably like our 576th straight Sunday out here. I don't know what people do on a Sunday afternoon. This started out, interesting enough. We thought, how can we get our message out and make a sacrifice? Everybody said Sunday afternoon. Oh, absolutely. We figured we'd be out there a few weeks. The LA Times said, what the hell's going on here? What are you guys doing? It's the busiest street in the corner in LA. 11 years later. So it tells you we're doing the right thing. Because we've got judgment, we got everything, won everything. So.
Great. Couple more questions, quick questions, just like to wrap it up. So,
document it that it's up. They don't cite me, which again, makes it for a stronger case when I go back to get that regulate thrown down, or they keep it. Excuse me. There is only one regulation. The flag is mentioned only once in somewhere like 2,500 words of regulation. It says you cannot display a foreign flag. So it's absolutely nothing about an American flag. But again, for anybody, the government, the United States government, particularly the VA, U.S. attorneys, to call it a placard is unforgivable.
So what do you need people to do, and how can they help?
Well, that's a good one, because obviously I think one of the first things is to get contact their members of Congress and Senate, but I'm not sure that goes anywhere. It would be nice if some of the good people would come out here. It helps. I'll tell you a little story. I live over in the Brentwood area, and that's why it's been helpful for me. I can oversee fate, I would say, if anything. The guy stopped me and he said, "You're the guy out front of Rosebrock." I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Can I offer a suggestion?" I said, "Sure, I always want." He said, "I've read some of your stuff," and this goes back a few years, and he said, 10,000 homeless veterans you claim. I said, "Yeah." He said, "Why don't you go out and get those 10,000 veterans and bring them out, and all of them down to Sunday?" And I said, a couple of questions first. I said, "We're going to go on a limb and say you're not a veteran." He said, "No, I'm not." "Now, you're not homeless." "No." "Do you know any homeless veterans?" "No." And I said, first of all, if I could, that's good. Hopefully that's a new one coming through. Whole Foods. If I could get 10,000 of them, I wouldn't be out here. I'd be outside with them. But I said, "I've got a suggestion for you." He said, "What's that?" I said, "Why don't you get 10,000 of your non-veteran friends and come out and do the job that I shouldn't even have to be out here to begin with. I already served my country. You should be." He says, "Well, one thing I learned is you're a difficult person to deal with, aren't you?" And I said, "Yep, I guess so. The facts hurt." And this is where their mentality, and that's why I have to say, we've got there are veterans, sometimes it happens like, not quite, but I mean, guys that belong to one of the VSO, the American Legion, or one of the bigger ones, have really undermined us because they work behind closed doors. They get what they want. They don't care. We have a saying in the old Veterans Guard: "Thank you for your service to our country, but no thank you for your disservice to our veterans." There are a lot of veterans. Just because you're a veteran doesn't mean you're holier now and all that other stuff. We, like I said, took an oath that soldier's duty is never done, and leave no comrade behind and all. And I try to live up to that. I always try to practice the golden rule. If I was homeless, what kind of person would I want standing up for me? And I try to be that person. And that's about all I can say in that area of it.
Okay, so go ahead and explain what the...
Yeah, we call ourselves the Old Veterans Guard, and it's kind of a takeoff. Back when the home was built, it was called the Old Soldiers' Home because they were the old veterans of the Civil War. And we decided to organize a group of old veterans. And we were fortunate to bring, the World War II veteran, Korean and Vietnam, and we decided we were going to make, this our statement of to save our veterans' land and to bring our homeless veterans home. It's twofold. It goes back with the life or property. And we agreed to meet out here on every Sunday because it was a sacrifice. Because Sundays are times you spend with family, and we understood that many veterans who are homeless don't have family, and so we were trying to give as much as we could on that. We also agreed we wouldn't set up a nonprofit. We didn't think we'd be in it that long, and we thought that if we did, there would be those who would try to coerce and buy us out. We'll give you X amount of money, just go away and shut up. and we were not for sale. And so we've never formed a nonprofit. So it's really, I mean, on myself personally, I took a big hit. I had a business venture I was just starting at the time, and it was headed in very much the right direction. I've never been sorry. I think Robert Frost talks about the fork in the road, taking the path least traveled, and that's certainly one I took, and I've never regretted it. But it's we're looking now to doing perhaps maybe a GoFundMe account or something to set up for, not so much for us, but for a tent city. You know, it's one thing, we're out here just carrying this on. When you have an idea or a vision, you need dollars and things to do it. And so we're looking at maybe doing a GoFundMe account. And where people, one of the ideas we have, it's so many nonprofits today, you just throw money, you don't know where it goes. But we want to set up, I've been doing research, for a couple $100 you can get a very nice small tent. And I mean small, to stand up, put a bed, whatever in it. Not a large industrial. But and they would sponsor a veteran. They would know that their $500 went to such and such, and they would check in on him or her. And so we've got this vision, this plan we want to do, and it's probably going back to how people can help. We'd like to be going more in that direction. We've done all we can out here.
Hi guys.
Hey, we'll talk to you after a bit.
Oh, okay.
Good. But anyway, that's kind of where we are on things, and we're looking to go ahead and eventually have a tent city in here. She was camping out on the sidewalk.
Yes.
Yeah.
For over 7 months now,
Yeah.
and I'm a veteran,
Okay.
born and raised here in LA.
So proud of you.
If I had my cane, I'd stand out here with you guys, but I gotta go back
it's all
to the
right.
dom.
Hey.
So this is for us females. I'm Melissa, here to represent.
She is just outstanding. She's a veteran, Air Force, right?
Air Force, yes.
Yeah. And from Maui originally?
Originally Los Angeles here. My father's from Maui. That's where my son lives now. My mom's from the Philippines and did it the legal way. So forget the wall, pay us and house us.
Yeah, but I'm just so proud. Like I said, if you want to go to war, this is the lady. I got video of you when they came on in those
and
dump
they took
trucks.
all my stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So 7 months. So what happened after those 7 months? How
Well,
did you?
finally, with certain people feeling bad for me, I finally got into the domiciliary. I'm not a drug addict. I'm dealing with domestic violence. And on both sides of the fence, I was harassed by the cops and took 2 days after I was assaulted by one of the fellow veterans. So I can't see out of this eye now. So finally, a little outburst. People in Washington, D.C. heard about what's happening. So I finally got in, and I'm just in the midst of getting my driver's license picture taken tomorrow and start the process of me being housed.
And what is your name, ma'am?
Melissa Tagaped.
Thank you so much.
Alrighty, have a great day, guys.
So proud of you. I want you to know that. Thank
When
you.
I have my cane, I'll stand out here
Okay.
with you guys.
What a remarkable. I mean, it works, it happens. But like I said, I got video. She's come out here, and you see this stable, very charming lady here. But a female, and that's one of the issues I got, females. And she's an attractive lady that guys were trying to hit on her. And she was just, so upstanding, and she was fighting mad at, And by the way, remember telling about the gentleman that had tears down his eye? He's standing right over there. So these things make me feel good. What happened there, I hope he becomes what she is. But I heard that they got her inside, got her help and everything. As you can see, she's well on her way. It works, but God bless America, right? Thank you. I love that too, where little kids in the back seat give you the thumbs up. And it's been a remarkable reward here and everything. And he used to come out a lot. And he was her caretaker, and then when she passed away, he starts coming out every Sunday. And, very good man, very good man. But you see on here, I mean, it's they mean well, and they do. I just wish we could have a big reception center in here. One of the things with veterans working together with, that was the old soldiers' home. They all served in the Union, and they all worked. They had like a sergeant and the squad leaders and everything else, and they got along. This is the thing. Anybody that served, particularly out of high school and everything, they really shape you up real quick. And that's what they miss after being in the military, given orders, told what to do, and they get the job done. I've asked guys before, I see him, I'll never forget one guy was over here, homeless guy, walking. He's just sitting there down, I talked to him, and I asked him if he served. Yeah, and I said, you win. If you can kind of qualify, know if they're telling the truth, and I can pretty much. I said, did you enjoy the military? He said, best time of my life. He said, I said, what do you miss about it? He said, my unit. He said, we had each other's back. When they get discharged, they're out here. People don't understand them at all. That's why we need this home where they can go in. I don't care if they're married and have children. You go in there and you talk to your old buddies you served with it. I'm going to say it, and I've caught so much flack from these guys, the American Legion and them. They've got their halls, whatever, and they serve alcohol. Worst thing you can do to them. Not the place to be serving alcohol and talking war stories. And I'm on the wrong side with them. And I grew up Central Indiana. The American Legion was the pillar of our society. These guys are off on their own. Got their own little elite group. The one in the Pacific Palisades is the wealthiest in the nation. In fact, Ronald Reagan belonged to it. It was very prestigious. The veterans left land. They left all kinds of. They've got like 15 million in the bank. They bring in 160,000 a month. And in 11 years, they've never sent one veteran out here, offered us $1, one sign, nothing. They have kids that go to Brentwood School. It's the elite. It's more of those that were officers in the legal, judge advocate corps, medical, doctors, finance, administration, things of that. No, nothing wrong with that. It's all necessary. But they use their money to influence people, and I'm just real disappointed in them that they have. In fact, when you look at Brentwood School, they're represented by Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher, one of the largest in the nation, and the past 3 U.S. attorneys worked for Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher. Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher represents Brentwood School, and there are several attorneys up in veterans up there. So it's just, I dismiss it and keep them away. I know they don't like me, and I don't like them. It's fine, like I said. Thank you for your service, but no thank you for what's going on here. They should have been the ones that stopped. Nobody has ever brought a lawsuit against the VA and these things. It's only been myself through the ACLU and Judicial Watch. And yet they got attorneys, or what do? Their attorneys are defending Brentwood School. Put that one together. Yeah, that's sad, very sad.
It's disgusting.
It is, yeah.